Okay, hi guys. I'm not Lauren. I'm not Lauren. Please don't go. Please don't go. You may know me as Ali Vids. You may know me from my publication called I Heart Fan Edits. And you may not know me at all, or you may have seen some of my edits and still not know me. Today, I'm going to be giving you a history of fan editing. So let me set the scene. The year's 1975. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham have just joined Fleetwood Mac. Vietnam War has just ended. Steven Spielberg released Jaws. Microsoft was founded, and this one sentence will forever be iconic. Be nice to nerds. Chances are you'll end up working for one. Fire line, but it's Bill Gates, so ew. SNL premiered, and bonus, my mother was born. And while this was all happening, there was magic emerging from a basement in Phoenix, Arizona. Kendi Fong was a huge Star Trek fan and attended Arizona State University. Kendi Fong debuted the first ever fan edit at EchoCon FilmCon convention. Using a slide projector to display individual frames, she projected these slides on one or more carousel projectors while playing pre-recorded audio tapes on a cassette player. She manually timed dissolves and cuts to match the music. This required rehearsals for somewhat of a live performance of broadcast for the fan edit, and this was the era we call bidding. Yes, you heard that right. Before these magical portable silver screens that we have, where millions of edits get uploaded to every day, we were sharing our love for fan culture at conventions. Hi, I'm Allie.
And I'm Lauren, aka Emo Who from Whoville, Candace VFX, Lolabug XD. There's probably more aliases. And this is the history of fan editing.
The bidding era. Okay, Kendi Fong moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 1973, where she started attending Arizona State University. At the time, they were trying to form a Star Trek club. Star Trek was a cultural phenomenon, still is, and back when the first edit was published, it was only a TV series. So to give context, Star Trek now has like 13 feature films and over a dozen spin-off shows. All you really need to know is the cultural shift this had on fan fiction, on fan editing, fan cons. It was just so significant. And I mean, people still loved, felt connected enough to the science fiction series that it changed our lives forever. She joined this club and it became what is now known as the United Federation of Phoenix. It is the oldest, longest running Star Trek club in the fucking world. Kendi states the club was looking for some entertainment one day. She says the slides technically belonged to her future husband, John Fong, but it was Kendi who saw the bits of film as not something to be owned, but as something to be used. She recalls herself asking, why don't we do something with this? Which I think is the whole momentum of this whole fucking thing. Why don't we fucking do something with this? Why don't we do something with this? Let's sit with that for a second. Why don't we do something with this? She says, we took a bunch of slides, mounted them as slides, and we ended up using them to make a little show. And I wrote a little story about Ensign Fong around the Enterprise, and we sang the song, What Do You Do with the Drunken Falcon? And it illustrated it with slides, and it was a big hit. So much so that it brought the experience to an even bigger community at the California Hell Media Fan Convention. This convention was a hub for early fan culture. So basically, she was all the way in Arizona, and this edit got so popular that they flew her out to the California convention and was like, you have to show it here too. Can you imagine, like, going to a convention, seeing the big old freak edit, right? The Peter Rabbit big old freak edit, we've all seen it. And you would have to wait in line to see it, right? And then you would get back in line to wait another hour to see it again. Like, this was serious. Most people believe the people in the suits, the industry, started to notice edits for promotional purposes more recently, but this is a complete lie. The first ever fan editor, Kendi Fong, was noticed by the Star Trek director Gene Roddenberry. He loved her edit so much and understood the value of fan content that he invited Kendi Fong to Paramount. Okay, he flew her to California to Paramount Studios and gave her exclusive Star Trek footage. By 1984, she owned more than 6,000 Star Trek slides from Paramount. So, like, this whole new era of Netflix, Hulu, TikTok, Lionsgate, HBO posting edits, they were doing it from the get. They knew it from the get. So it's easy to say that people in the suits notice from the get the importance of fan culture and the crossover with marketing, but more on that later. Okay, now not to go back in time, but to give more context on video editing. It was first seen as a woman's job. It was similar to sewing and weaving like film, and then sound got introduced and men were like, women can't do that. Women can't be smart enough possibly to do that. That being said, while I look to my right and my left in this industry, I do see a lot more men in video editing. Some say it's a male-dominated field, or at least it feels that way at certain times. But I guarantee some of your favorite movies, TV shows, music videos were edited by a woman. And just like Jaws in 1975, Verna Fields basically edited the movie using Moviola editing machine. Can you imagine making a fan edit on one of these? In 2005, Harvard, we're kind of jumping ship, but basically in 2005, Harvard held a conference called Signal Noise 2K5 Creative Revolution. Female-dominated remix arts like fanfiction, fan art, and vidding were still very much underground through rapidly growing in popularity and visibility due to the internet. However, there were still noticeably only 6 women out of 25 speakers on the program at Harvard that day, and no woman at the conference was given a solo speaking slot. They had a lot of different presentations today, and one was about AMV. This is, by the way, what I'm quoting right now is Francesca Coppa in her book Vidding. She says, at the end of the presentation, Marino explained that people had been doing creative work like this since the 1990s. I remember exchanging glances with my friends in the audience. We were all thinking the same thing. These guys don't know that vidding exists. Media fans, mostly female and mostly queer, have been making remix videos since the mid-1970s. The scholars I had just seen and others like them were going to write the history of remix, and vidding wasn't going to be in it. But fandom, particularly the girl parts, was just not cool. Probably some nice women's studies professor, I remember saying bitterly, would come along and find vidding again, but wouldn't it be better if vidding never got lost in the first place? So the erasure of women in editing exists in every space. It was actually very rare to find people who were open to talk about vidding. We have to remember copyright was a very big thing. Like, yes, while Gene Roddenberry definitely let her use the slides, what about everyone else, right? So Francesca Coppa goes on to say most vidders, fearing both legal repercussions and ridicule, didn't want anyone to know that vidding as an art form even existed. In fact, they'd taken quite a lot of care to ensure that people didn't know. They worked under pseudonyms, distributing vids only to trusted others via snail mail. Or more recently, offering videos downloaded on password-protected websites if you swore not to share the passwords with others. That sounds familiar, right? Google Drive, Mega, Dropbox, Mediafire. God forbid the linked one where it's like Linktree and you have to wait. I don't think it's Linktree. What's it called? Linkverse. Oh my god, I hate that shit. Everything has evolved. But not much in the way we go about it has changed. It's more the perception of the way the world has been more accepting now that they see the impact. Copyright is still a huge problem in editing, but now how do we find a solution to it when marketers are even sending movies to fan editors for promotion?
So what I did is I went online, and there are these amazing things on YouTube that the fans create, which are basically music videos of Kate Austen's life, and I just watch those. It's like they've done my homework for me.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Nini. You might know me on my social medias as Avaidan, and today I'm going to be bringing you the YouTube side of fan editing. So YouTube sneaks up on us during this time, and it's still widely known as vidding online in college communities and internet spaces, and it created a base of what we all know and love today and continues the same narratives Candy Fong had created in her basement. The YouTube editing era quite literally skyrocketed fan editing in a way that no one had ever seen or was prepared for. AMVs, anime music videos, were some of the most impactful forms of art that we had seen dating back to the 80s, when we would see its first emergence at science fiction and comic conventions. Video hosting had been offered in the 2000s, and this was the first time that people had realized that they could share their music videos via animemusicvideos.org. In the 2010s and onward, people noticed it was much quicker and much more accessible to share these particular works on YouTube instead. People were sharing and consuming edits of their favorite animes at the click of a button. Literally, what's not to love? The combination of softwares like Windows Movie Maker being easily accessible and how easy it was to now share content online is considered one of AMV's golden ages. When I really started paying attention to YouTube edits was around 2015, and I got introduced to FMV's fan music videos. Whether it was storytelling, romance, lyric videos, or character studies, I was all in. People were making intricate storylines out of a show about dancers who were literally trying to make it to the top of the pyramid, or making ships who were not written in TV shows suddenly a fan favorite simply because of their ability to play around with clips and choose the perfect songs that amplified the story they were trying to tell. You were not restricted by time and could be as detailed as possible, which was super exciting. There were so many ways to contribute to the creative community on YouTube, one being scene packs, so editors did not have to go seek out clips themselves, which took a lot of time. Others being creating tutorials so that people could replicate the styles of their favorite editors, giveaways filled with resource packs, colorings, transitions, effects, etc. And it was a non-gatekeeping space of uplifting current and aspiring creatives. Going back to not being restricted by time, collaborations were huge during this time, especially when it came to birthdays. Like, I remember sitting and watching 3-minute edits filled with every celebrity there was celeb at the time in order to celebrate someone else. These were usually referenced as MEPs, multi-editor projects, and really launched collaborative work and creative relationships.
I'm sure we all remember Vine, the 6-second platform that really put our humor to the test. You might be funny, but can you be funny in 6 seconds or less? And in a similar fashion, you may be a good editor, but can you make a good edit in only 6 seconds? Vine edits were intentionally straight to the point. They couldn't really be anything else. A handful of clips, Ken Burns-esque pans and zooms. That's really all we needed. And for something that seems so constrained, Vine was actually the exact segue we needed for short, transition-based fan edits to become common practice on social medias. Before Vine, if I wanted to watch a fan edit, I was running to YouTube to type up like Divergent fan-made music video and watching a 3-minute long montage edit. It's still a fan edit, but it's more adjacent to that vidding style.
Someone told me I should take caution when it comes to love. I did.
Not really the modern day fan edit we think of that's super animation heavy and typically capped out at 30 seconds, even if you can technically do more. So with an uncapped amount of time on YouTube, these edits weren't necessarily paced according to quick beats or like individual lyrics. Instead, for example, a joint line of lyrics might only accompany 2 relevant clips, and the clips are multiple seconds long to match the duration of the lyrics. Think of the song Just the Way You Are by Bruno Mars. The lyric, she's so beautiful and I tell her every day. In YouTube style, you might have the line, she's so beautiful with 1 clip. Even though it's only 3 words, it's a couple of seconds long. And then for the lyric, and I tell her every day, you'll have another clip. So 2 relatively long clips.
Tell them I was happy and my heart is broken.
Now let's say you only have 6 seconds to showcase the same feeling or narrative with these same lyrics. To really send the point home in 6 seconds, you might now pace the clips according to beats or the individual words. Boom, she's so beautiful, do. And I tell her every... So Vine opened the doors to the idea that, with regards to fan editing, less can actually be more when talking about length. And on top of that, not only were we consuming more edits, but we're consuming them at a faster rate because they are so short and easily accessible. But there is a huge exception to this, and you probably already know what I'm talking about. AMVs. AMV is an acronym for anime music video, and it's basically the OG version of the transition-heavy edits that we see today. This started in the mid to late 2000s on YouTube. The whole point was to match clips to fast-paced songs and animate them to make a very action-packed edit. But as emphasized in the music video part of the acronym, it still maintained that sense of storytelling that we see in OG vidding. This style was of course popularized among anime editors, and this is in part because the animation style involved a lot of tweening. It's a form of rigging animation to create movement out of still images. So with anime or video game characters, you could take official HD images and then rig them at the joints, animate the hair, and even animate facial expressions to really bring it to life. And even though I've never made a full-length AMV edit, so many of the edits I've created are directly inspired by this AMV style. And a lot of other editing styles that became popular later on are derived from AMV style. For example, Banana's Candy style. But I'll get into this later. It's also important to note that AMV editors were like the OG collaborators. To be able to make these long edits, you would commonly have 20+ editors working on one video, with each person editing a few seconds or a few lines of lyrics. And of course, collab edits are now super commonly seen on TikTok and Instagram. But how does this tie into Vine? Even though Vine was only 6 seconds, which seems perfect for this fast-paced AMV style, this style didn't really translate to early Vine edits. Vine edits that had transitions usually just contained your basic slides, zooms, and shakes, with minimal overlays and effects like shape masks. I think one reason for this is that AMV style was relatively niche. I mean, it's evident from the name. You could technically edit anything in this style, but it was largely reserved for anime edits. So learning how to edit like this required time, dedication, and possibly being a part of a niche online community where fan editors gave each other tips and tricks on how to crack into this style of editing. With early Vine editors, the initial goal wasn't really to make something as complex as an AMV, and this gets into my second point about the disconnect between AMV and Vine edits. The motivation behind making them. With AMV YouTube editors, chances are they consider themselves to be both fans and editors. These are 2 distinct titles. With early Vine editors, they more than likely made their accounts on the sole basis of being a fan, and over time began to consider themselves editors. But anyways, AMVs rest on an interesting point in the editing timeline, no pun intended, because they seem more culturally niche despite influencing a lot of the edits we see today. So as I continue to talk about early Vine and Instagram editing, editing, I'm not ignoring this influence. It's just a fact that a lot of editors on Vine and Instagram may not have even been aware of this AMV YouTube universe.
I do want to clarify though, not all of the AMV edits look like this tweening, animation-heavy style. In fact, most AMV edits looked something like this. You might recognize this Mad Hatter AMV because it has 21 million views on YouTube.
Skinny dipping rabbit holes for fun. Poppin' balloons with guns.
This type of style is something that you actually were pretty likely to see on Vine. And so I wanted to touch on this animation-heavy tweening style because of course it's so influential today, but it didn't really dominate the early days of Vine and Instagram editing.
Hence why this influence is seen more later on when transition-based edits really started to blow up. So I personally regard Vine as a huge pioneer for the current state of edits, but I do think that fact gets overshadowed by all the other cultural and meme influences to come out of the app. So Vine officially shut down in 2017, and I would say the peak years for the editing community on there were 2014 to 2016. I have very fond memories of watching Teen Wolf and Girl Meets World edits on there. Emphasis on the Teen Wolf though, that was like a huge fandom on Vine. Editors would use hashtag OMG page to get more outreach, which trickled over to Instagram, but definitely started on Vine. And speaking of Instagram, they released their 15-second video feature only 6 months after Vine was released in 2013. So even though this competing app had a video feature that was 11 seconds longer, the edit community still really thrived on Vine because of this Vine-specific style of editing that really takes advantage of this 6-second structure. You could have an edit on Vine that is fully complete, and it literally only has 2 screen pumps and a slide. But in my opinion, Vine was ahead of the curve compared to Instagram. In terms of incorporating the modern day editing style we see, I actually was never a Vine editor. I got my start with Instagram editing in 2013, Dance Moms fandom of course. So over the next 2 years, I went through many different fandoms, made a lot more edits, and by 2015, this is what one of my edits looked like.
When the sun shines, we'll shine together. Told you I'll be here forever. Said I'll always be your friend. Took enough, I'ma stick it out to the end.
Even though it does have pans and wipe animations, I still hadn't been introduced to this concept of seamless transitions through manual keyframing, and I think a lot of this is because I didn't get my start as a Vine editor. So Vine officially shuts down January 17th, 2017. I really don't know if this was by coincidence or if it ignited some sort of spark in me, but during that same week, I created my 4th ever Instagram editing account dedicated to Total Drama Island, of course. I went from Capcut Pro to Final Cut Pro. Instagram videos could now be 60 seconds long as of 2016, I believe. And so this 60-second Instagram edit structure was like the perfect hybrid of Vine techniques and OG vidding. And this is how this edit came to be. My first Total Drama Island edit on Instagram account at Dunkinese. And like I said, I consider this to be a very clear intersection of old and modern fan edit practices. It's a montage-esque base with clips that are very carefully considered to match the beats, lyrics, or just vibe of a song. And it's embellished by effects and animations that are also meant to be on beat. Now this account didn't even make it to the end of 2017 because my interests are constantly shifting. By November of 2017, it was time for my final Instagram editing account dedicated to my most favorite topic at the time, Riverdale. This is of course user Emo Who from Whoville, the only reason that this YouTube channel exists today. My first few edits were on Final Cut Pro. But at that point, I was like, let me try making my own keyframe animations. Now, after making this first edit for the account, I realized that even though Instagram had 60 seconds to post, I couldn't always realistically be using all the 60 seconds if I wanted all my edits to be transition and effect heavy. Like that Total Drama edit you just watched, I worked on over the course of 2.5 weeks, I believe. So basically, if I wanted to be popping out transition heavy Riverdale edits every single week, each edit needed to be shorter. And that's essentially the structure of how many fan editors post today. This desire to post consistently was also something relatively new and a product of the engagement-driven era of editing. When I started my Riverdale account, I obviously wanted to make good edits, but also gain followers, and ideally quickly. As social media has become more popular over the last decade, we don't just see it as a tool to disperse our edits, but also as a metric for success. Think back to AMVs. They're also transition heavy, but can be multiple minutes long. There was no urgency to shorten shorten this because there wasn't as much of an urgency to post consistently with the goal of gaining an audience. Obviously, these editors still wanted followers and recognition for their work, otherwise they probably wouldn't be posting on social media, but definitely not in the same way that Vine and Instagram editors crave it. It's not necessarily quantity over quality, but having an awareness of how much time you should realistically put into each individual edit if you want to be posting consistently. And this realization is what kickstarted my switch from Final Cut Pro to After Effects, because if I was now going to put emphasis on transitions and effects, then it didn't make as much sense to use Final Cut. But wait, why all of the emphasis on transition and effects in the first place? Why don't we just keep it simple? Put clips next to each other, hit the beat, maybe some subtle shakes and zooms. Like, if meaningful storytelling is the goal, then what do the transitions and effects even add to that? Well, for starters, storytelling isn't the only goal of fan editing. Editing as an art form, of course, comes with creative technique and visual innovation. And innovation is really a key word. Like, I don't know a single editor who wants to edit the same way in 2026 as they did back in 2016. We're always trying to change, grow, get better. And like I said, Vine edits and early Instagram edits contain some elements from the modern day fan editing that we see regarding transitions and effects. Editors are and always have been innovating their techniques, but the rate of this innovation varies over the years. It can change from one year to the next, and most importantly, it can be impacted by a single person or a single edit. It's not that transition heavy edits just came out of nowhere, but the progression towards it happened very gradually over the course of about a decade, and then it seemed to hit an exponential curve in 2016 due to a few key players, specifically on Instagram. Hannah's Vids and Bokeh AEP are two editors that come to mind for me personally, because they were some of the first and most popular references of this transition heavy After Effects style that I saw. And just as many editors were inspired by them, even to this day, they were also inspired by other editors. Like, a lot of their early edit captions would give credits to Legally Co or Swaggy Edit. And this is not a call out or a bad thing at all. In fact, it's the opposite. None of this speaks to the point that editors are unoriginal or only thrive based on reheating nachos. The whole point of fan editing is to reheat nachos, but then you go on and add your own new toppings and seasonings. Getting inspiration from other editors is not only a core factor of modern day fan editing, but it's quite literally the reason why we emphasize transition and effect heavy editing today. Like I said, when you really think about it, it only takes an editor or a single edit to influence the masses. I personally encountered this phenomenon for the first time in 2021 when I made my Her the Sun edit. Many of you might remember this. It is really a part of my legacy. The edit was spreading like wildfire, and it inspired direct recreations or edits using similar techniques from the edit. So for example, if someone was inspired by this concept of selecting items with a mouse, they might give me idea credits in the caption. And since then, my style of editing has birthed an entire new subculture of editing denoted as Lauren style. No, I did not manufacture this. It is not like an industry plant of an editing style. It all happened naturally. Now, what other editing styles started to develop during this era? First, let's talk about Bananas, aka the gorgeous Amelie. So Amelie is well known for popularizing the candy style of editing, which in my opinion is one of the hardest and most time-consuming edit styles. And as I mentioned earlier, it's pretty reminiscent of that AMV style. It can be characterized by bright color schemes, text animations, and a ton of overlays, and like remarkably smooth transitions. Each frame, which is just a few milliseconds long, can take hours upon hours to properly layer. Her most popular edit is a one she made of Mackenzie Ziegler to the song Sweet Talk. Recreated this myself and did a whole YouTube video about it. I was able to show Amelie the final product. She was so nice about it. And to call this edit iconic would be an understatement, because you still have editors to this day on all different programs recreating it. Actually, what impresses me most about Amelie is that she started on Video Star and then eventually moved over to After Effects. But a lot of the time, people couldn't even tell which of her edits were from Video Star and which were from AE. That obviously speaks to her talent, and that talent transcends any program. Her style is her style regardless of what she's editing on. And it also speaks to the point that you can make a great edit on any application, which I know is something that a lot of editors need to hear. Now let's talk about Sienna MP4. We actually collaborated on an edit in 2021.
I'm about to party on you. Watch me party on you, yeah.
She did the first part, I did the second, and it really shows how different our styles are. Like Amelie, her style can be characterized by a lot of bright color schemes, overlays, textures, but obviously in a very different way. I think her style dominated the Muser editing era, where you would see edits of Lauren Gray every 2 swipes. And I think Sienna is a great example of how specific editing styles can become common practice in certain fandoms. If you edit Musical.ly creators, you might stick with a very specific style of editing, versus if you're editing shows and movies, you might gravitate towards a different style of editing. Perhaps the Amelia's Bastard style. The last pioneer I will touch on is Amelia's Bastard, whose edit style I think is most similar to the current TikTok velocity style we see as compared to any of the other OGs. Think of the modern day TikTok velocity edit, but with basic and foundational transitions. So basically slides, zooms, and shakes. Despite the style not being as technically advanced as Amelie or Sienna's, Amelia's Bastard was able to stand out in other ways. They were always editing the hot topic of the moment in a very timely manner, so they were kind of striking while the iron was hot, which really worked in their favor in terms of views and likes. They also had a very distinct coloring, and in my opinion, a super specific way of placing keyframes and shaping graphs that made it really obvious when an edit was made by them, even if it only contained simple transitions like zooms and slides. And that's one of the 2 main reasons why I think Amelia's Bastard was able to thrive, despite always being called out for having basic edits. Anyone who's tried recreating one of their edits, myself included, knows that it's actually harder than you think. And I think this feature distinguishes people like Amelia's Bastard, Amelie, and Sienna from any other editor, which is that you might be able to recreate their edits, but there's a certain oomph to it that makes it so distinctly theirs. And the second reason why I think Amelia's Bastard was so successful is that they were editing so many different fandoms that they were bound to get viewers from all different demographics. It's important to note that from the years of 2018 to 2019, Instagram's algorithm really favored fan edits. There are nights that I would post an edit, go to sleep, and wake up with 300,000 views before school the next morning. I had an edit from 2018 to get over 1 million views, and this was common practice. Like, I would actually tweak out if one of my edits had less than 100,000 views. If you remember the Amelia's Bastard era, you would know that they were usually getting over 1 million views on all of their edits. Why this isn't the case for editors on Instagram anymore gets into the shift towards TikTok editing, which Allie is going to touch upon soon. But Amelia's Bastard was probably the editor that most profoundly opened the doors for fan edits to now be shown on mainstream feeds to people who either don't edit or don't usually watch fan edits. And this is basically what we see today for a lot of successful TikTok edits. If an edit has over 1 million likes, it's probably not because only editors are liking it. It's also important to note that this era of editing kind of birthed the recreation culture in the community that we see more than ever today. And I think this recreation culture goes hand in hand with stan culture in the edit community. Not stanning shows or celebrities, but stanning editors. Okay, stanning might not be the perfect word, but it's this concept of being tuned in to a certain editor because you like the way they edit, not necessarily because you like who or what they're editing. For me personally, there are a lot of editors who consistently over the past couple of years have been remaking, for example, any transition edit that I'm dropping. They might not know or care about whatever K-pop idol I'm editing, but they still tune in and remake. So recreating edits is one of the most common practices now in the modern day landscape. And this observation gets into my next point about how editors are influenced, and because of this, we fundamentally are not that different. So when we think about vidding, Vine era, early Instagram era, the actual ability to influence was limited and restricted to things like audio choice or what fandom you're editing. And this is because there weren't many specific techniques to be influenced by. So when editors like Hannah and Boca began giving more thought to transitions and effects and became super popular, it had this crazy domino effect that inspired other editors to explore and experiment with animations, 3D scenes, overlays, backgrounds, text, the list goes on. And if you've been in the editing community for a long time, you can still probably envision specific edits from these editors because they were so innovative and impactful in the community. Let's take a second to think about the evolution of editing like the evolution of humans. You, me, and a fish all share a common ancestor despite the fact that we are nothing like a fish. And both ourselves and that fish are so vastly different from that common ancestor that it might be ludicrous to even think that we're related. In a similar fashion, my edits are very different from Allie's edits. And both of our edits are very different from Boca AEP's edits, for example. But at some point along the way, we were inspired by an editor who is inspired by another editor editor who is inspired by someone else. I am living proof of it. I am one single person, right? But there are thousands upon thousands of edits out there that are directly inspired by something that I have created. But I too exist as a branch off of another point or another editor, regardless of if I even realize it or not. I also think it's important to clarify that when I say inspiration, it is not a one-to-one thing of I am directly recreating this edit or my entire style looks like yours. Inspiration can be as simple as you use this color scheme, I'm gonna use this color scheme. You use this one individual effect, I'm gonna use it at some point in my edit. Editors aren't meant to evolve parallel to each other with any overlap being denoted as unoriginality or copying. Rather, we evolve with each other. It's all intertwined. So the Star Trek edit and one of my edits, it all boils down to having love and admiration for a topic and conveying that passion through the art of video editing.
Hi guys, I am fucking back. TikTok era. Okay, so then TikTok was introduced and around 2020 things started to take off. Audios that we edited to in different fandoms had always been a thing, but with this app it was different. It was rewarding artists in an organic and oversaturated way. I mean, is it still rewarding artists in an organic, oversaturated way? Oversaturated, one would say, but I don't know about organic. Our edits were now connected to these artists' names, and TikTok started to become a thing, creating a whole new era of styles and young kids seeing video edits online of their fave influencers, or even making the edits themselves. So basically, this introduced a whole new era of fan editing to a younger audience, and that's pretty crazy. I mean, someone to be like, they first found out fan editing was on TikTok is crazy to me, because I'm like, Vine, YouTube, Instagram, even the conventions, like, where were we? How are we losing these texts? Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for, the Timothée Chalamet Call Me By Your Name playdate edit in trend. Going from Instagram, which strictly at that time only liked transition edits. Isn't that crazy? We still exist and they're still on there, but this edit created a monster, a new controversial clip style. Do we love it? Do we hate it? Personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it created a monster. Is it a good monster? Is it a bad monster? It's for you to find out. This more simple style does not bother me. I think there's a lot of talk at the time because fan edits were always associated with transitions. But now if you bring up fan edits, people mostly recognize this clip style more. This has to do with our attention spans and the way we are consuming edits. For example, when I made transition edits and showed it to my mom, her generation said too fast. To me and my friends, we fully got it. We fully consumed it. It was easy. It made sense. The pace was perfect and enough for us to grasp. But with an edit that is, quote, easier on the eyes, less stimulating and closer to other editing we see in our day-to-day life, like commercials and TV and music, videos and film, letting clips breathe in an edit is not wrong. It's your intention with it. And I would argue hot edits have always been popular, but once this style was introduced, it was able to reach a larger audience. Let's jump to 2022 when fandoms were doing what fandoms do, consuming media and making edits out of them. And editor Emo Wanda AEP created an edit to a new Tim Burton show on Netflix called Wednesday. Yes, that's right, guys. We all remember this edit. We've seen the edit. We've all seen the edit. The smooth velocity style mixed with the catchy Lady Gaga hit. This edit got the song to chart, Lady Gaga to promote it again, and for her to appear as a character in season 2 in 2025. This is like monumental to me because, like, what do you mean it charted? Lady Gaga promoted the song again, and then she's in the fucking show in season 2, all because of a fan edit. And this, sorry guys, this is crazy. Fan edit did that, and this is me when I realized we were on the cusp of something great and also scary. Our impact was happening outside of our phones. It was happening outside of our phones, and that was very weird and new and strange. In a way, vidding kind of had it like that, but then we went so into our phones and the internet that, like, we weren't impacting people. But then Capcut templates came along. Capcut templates and the app started to take over. While All Light Motion Video Star and the Devil reincarnated Capcut Pro, a lot of teens have been making edits with them for years now. Capcut kind of introduced a whole new realm of accessibility for fan editors, and I am a strong believer in having no accessibility to a computer. Editing software leads you to using what you have. I started with Capcut Pro, then with Video Star, then After Effects, Premiere, etc. I actually don't know how you guys edit on your phones. It's very difficult to me. That being said, templates trended, which interrupts a flow of creativity and individuality, which is a huge conversation right now. I mean, and then the Saltburn Flume Jacob Lordy edit happened. That was just another hot, fun edit. Whenever I say one of those things, I'm sure you associate it to the edit. So the song trended again. Jacob got more fans. People tuned into Saltburn. It was a perfect marketing scheme, but it was fully organic. And I think that was the craziest part. And many edits had been getting people to tune in TV shows, music, sports, all kinds of media for a long time. It's a perfect little teaser to get people interested. But all of these things happening at once create a monster. Engagement is at an all-time high. I see edits with 2.2 million views, and I don't even bat an eye. Unheard of in the Amelia Bastard days. Okay, guys, the Creed edit was so popular that I was on a Hinge date, and I was on a Hinge date, and I mentioned the fact that I'm an editor, and they talked about the Creed edit, and I was like, the fuck do you mean you know what that is? Why are you on my side of the internet? Back off. No, it was just kind of crazy, because it was like, what do you mean you've seen the Creed edit too? I mean, like, of course it has like 14 million likes and like 100 million views, 150 million views, but it's still crazy. Like, it reached such a crazy audience. Like, the guy I went on a Hinge date with was talking about it to me. 14 million likes and 130 million views, a monster, a good one in my opinion. Showcasing the best of what we are trailer editors at our core, cutting things to fit a narrative of like what we want others to perceive. The exact same intention Candy Fong and the Star Trek Club had. Same thing, just different platforms. Conversation on if the Creed edit was worth the hype is just so stupid to me. This was an editor that created that organically, and the algorithm just boosted it to the point that it became pop culture reference. TikTok changed who viewed what. From Stranger Things cast watching edits and requesting songs to their characters to be edited to the off-campus cast reposting, commenting, and knowing the edits were going to happen while they were filming. Like, crazy. I would argue that half of the 36 million people who tuned into Off Campus on Prime the first week of was influenced by an edit on Twitter, TikTok, or Instagram, maybe even YouTube. And so the different media companies have noticed this, paying editors to edit to their artist songs in hopes of it blowing up. But the problem is when it works, it works. And when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So as disgenuine as it is, the song came viral and people were talking about it and using it. But if us editors are organically promoting things, it gets murky when people in the suits start paying attention to us promoting. I mean, everything is already a marketing tactic. Do we give in? Do we not? Do we give in? Do we keep creating? I did. I have used audios that were paid, but I always tried to do it with like what aligns with me. I've passed on a bunch of editing opportunities because I'm like, I don't align with that and I don't want to make that edit. But also being so overly aware is like, was this trend or song organic? Has TikTok ruined editing? No. I mean, it's simply changed the game and not everyone can get used to that. Last summer I worked with Lollapalooza and garnered 12 million views from the pre-show edits online alone. That only worked because I knew what I was doing and I edited with intention. I can spot bullshit, and I know you can too. So keep your guard up, but continue to edit with intention. Don't let a new app change that. Just like recent fan edit audio, Katy Perry's Chief Keef collab, like Legendary Lovers, is become so popular that the actual artist released an official audio on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. I mean, like, the impact we have is crazy. But most people are probably asking, where do we go from here? Okay, guys, as someone who works in the industry and is a fan editor at heart, where the fuck do we go from here? This is all uncharted, murky fucking water. You don't want to be taken advantage of, and you don't want to flop, I guess. So many things. But also, you don't have to make this a career. I mean, that doesn't have to be your next step unless you want it to be. I did because I love the technicality of editing, and I fan edited because I was inspired by the industry that I so desperately wanted to be and still do to be included in. My best advice is to either create a style that is so unique only you can be paid for it, or even just a skill like mixed media, CGI, 3D, VFX, SFX, etc. Understanding what type of editing do you want to pursue? Is it motion design? Is it music videos? Is it film? Is it campaigns? Is it commercials? Is it tours, sports, animation? It's endless, seriously. The more the merrier. I mean, it will weed out the weak ones, and if you truly love it, you will get by. I'm living proof of that. But to me, fan editing will always be around as long as fangirls exist. It's a way to consume media and keep it fun and fresh. Fan edits not only are the future, but they are the backbones of these apps. I mean, we have curated who like, find hot, ship, find funny. I mean, 6'7" is from an edit. What you watch, we have done it all, and I think it's something to be proud of as a community. Not the 6'7" part, but we have come so far from Candy Fong asking, why don't we do something with this in an Arizona basement? And I think that is really beautiful.
Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? That's a great question, actually. But no, seriously, this field is so special. I think there are a lot of cards that are getting stacked against us with our favorite thing right now, AI. And as a longtime creative of 8 years in this field, who is, by the grace of greater, just now getting into industry connections, I can say it wasn't because I edited like my peers. When I first started, I did not compare myself to people or what they were doing because it was my individual passion and something that took my mind off of whatever 14-year-old Nini was going through. As time went on, I took notice of how passionate my peers were, and that was enough to launch me into never giving up, regardless of like the advances of AI. Human art will never not be important, and you will always make someone feel something with your art. People leaving comments on your work and telling you how much it means that you still continue to, release work and release art from your heart is not something that you should take lightly. And if someone sees something special in you, you need to hold on to that, and most importantly, continue to see what is special in yourself. This passion found you for a reason. It found 14-year-old Nelly, and I have been grateful ever since, and I don't ever want to stop doing this. I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Which goes, I go in all the way. Don't step on the brakes. I'll take my commas straight. I'll make you lemonade. Okay, I do have to go.